I'd like to begin with a fact. Whether in a small town like McAllen and the Rio Grande, or in Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles, it is business. Big business.
Welcome to the Girl Get Visible podcast. This show talks about traffic, marketing, and business. This is for the retailers, the coaches, the course creators, and service providers who want to build a legacy, build authority, and build a brand that people admire. The visible girls who are not afraid to get out of the sea of sameness and to find her tribe. Business owners ready to go from consumers to creators and build an online presence where your tribe can find you. We talk about topics like SEO, content marketing, and business systems, but that's only because our visible girls are ready to do business like a business. Stop hiding in the crowd and get visible. Hey guys, how are you doing? So this is a hot take episode. Let me tell you, it's actually been building for probably a couple of weeks now, probably a couple of months, but a couple of weeks that I know I've been putting out some information about it. And so I wanted to do a quick episode. When I say this is quick, like in hot take, I am literally supposed to be heading out somewhere today and I had to jump on and have this little quick conversation with you guys. But let me get to the point. So you guys saw the title, is AI or Google, are they stealing your content? And why this is important for us, especially as entrepreneurs, as course creators, consumers, a whole type of thing, and really as AI data consumers and AI data creators, or potentially creators, even if we don't realize we're AI data creators. This topic is going to be even more important because A, we don't want our stuff getting stolen, of course, and B, we don't want to be using stolen stuff, right? So I'm going to go through a couple of things that, like I said, this kind of been building and mounting over the last couple of weeks. Then I'm going to give you guys my kind of thoughts and feelings and concerns about it. And then I'll wrap up with a couple of different things that you guys can do to ensure that you aren't stepping on any of these like copyright infringement, stealing content landmines, especially when you're using, I'm gonna pick on Chat GPT a little bit, but I'm gonna say any AI tool, including my own, right? So, and I'm going to talk about the little bit of difference there. I actually just recently did a post on it. So let me start from the very beginning of how this topic is really starting to come to light. And like I said, I think although we're hearing about it more the last couple of weeks, I think it's been one of those looming things. And I think I even mentioned it in some of my earlier episodes of other things that I talked about, that this kind of stuff was going to start to happen. And to be honest, anytime you come out with something new and it's big, people start poking holes in it, right? And start looking for things. And so I think now that it's out there that this is what's happening, right? That people are poking holes in it. People are looking for issues. People are finding issues. And it's a much bigger thing. Because be clear, like, so the whole thing with Chat GPT, which is really the public facing user interface, that just became available in December of 2022. But there are companies that have been using OpenAI's API, and a lot of acronyms here, but the API is to connect to their software. But so people have been using that for probably like 2-3 years now, at least about 2. Things like Grammarly uses, I believe they tap into OpenAI. Jarvis taps into OpenAI. So there are a number of tools. My tool now taps into OpenAI, which is what we did this year. So there are a number of tools that have been getting data from OpenAI way before Chat GPT. Chat GPT is just a public facing interface that OpenAI created, so pretty much they can benefit off their own thing that they created. I get it, right? And we all pay for it, right? So I pay for the API side. You guys might be paying for the Chat GPT side. So they're making money over money, but that's a whole nother episode. But so now that it's more widely available, now that everyone's talking about it, now that Google is also being very aggressive with the work that they're doing on their AI, which is Bard. So now that those things are coming to light, people are investigating, right? And digging deeper, poking holes in it, stuff like that. This happens with everything. So if you're like, why is it happening to them? The bigger you get, the more people try to see things that are happening, right? It just happens. So be prepared. Because we're all going to be that big, right? Be prepared that it could happen to you. But some of the things that they're finding, and I'm not saying it like they're just haters, they're actually finding some very valid things and some very valid points. It's just, which is why I decided to put a whole episode very quickly on this. So first, let's talk about the lawsuits. Just last 2 weeks ago, July 5th, and I'm gonna make sure that all these notes are in the show notes, but I made a post on Facebook sharing a screenshot of the article from Search Engine Journal where they talked about these two specific lawsuits. These aren't the only lawsuits, but two specific lawsuits that had come against OpenAI. And there's another one that I think separately has come against Google, right? Both of those lawsuits are around essentially the same thing. What they're saying is that when OpenAI and or Google for Bard or whoever was creating the different AI models, right? But when they're loading and training their model, that they are using copyrighted data, right? So a little difference between training and loading. So training is often used like to help them get it to process data correctly. Like it's going to ask questions, what are the answers, and kind of going back and forth, which is how, it's a very layman's description of how they get AI models to give us the results that are the ones that we're anticipating or expecting, right? So that's the training part. Then the loading part is you also have to load the database with information essentially for the AIs to look at, right? And to comb through, and that's how they get their results. Again, very layman's term description of both of these, right? But I know my audience is super like technical, so we're not gonna go there, right? But that's the difference, right? So it's one thing to train with it, it's another thing to load it. I believe that what they trained it with is a lot of what they loaded with as well, right? It's kind of weird not to, because then your results aren't exactly the same. So I can see a subset of information, but that's what they're saying. They're saying, oh, we only used it for training. We did not use it for everything. But why wouldn't you? So already that doesn't make any sense, their response to some of this, right? So these lawsuits are saying that they used copyrighted information or copywritten information. One of the lawsuits is specifically about from two authors who are citing that their books were used in the training or use of the data, right? And then some other lawsuits are just talking about the actual just scraping of websites, right? So that's where this is really going to get interesting. The scraping of website data, because if you put that little copyright at the bottom, your website is essentially copyright protected. You have first use all the good things. These are your original thoughts, no duplications. You guys know I talk about that, right? So now they're saying, oh, well, you scraped all of these different websites, and so that's potentially a problem. And the most important thing, which I'm going to bring this up again towards where my thoughts on this, but the most important thing is that they're not citing sources. So you can't copy, right? But you can use and you can reference if you cite the sources, right? If y'all remember back in high school, back in college, when you had to do the papers and everybody learned how to do a citation page, right? And whether you did, what is it, the APA or the MLA, one of the other ones, whichever one you used, it told you about citing sources. And so what some people are saying is that this thing doesn't cite sources, which makes a lot of sense because it's not like everybody, and which is a whole nother story, but I talked about that too. But it's not like these AI machines all of a sudden knew all this data. They had to learn from somewhere and learn from some other data, but yet it never cites sources. So that's problem number one. And that is what's hitting them a lot with these lawsuits that are coming up, whether it's from a specific person or specific source like the authors who are saying my book was used, or if it's just in general, like if you've got this data, you had to get it from somewhere, and most likely you got it from public facing sites, right? So that's some of the lawsuits that are coming up, and there are more. Those are just the two that I know I have a reference to that are coming up. And then recently, which is what said, let me just jump on and do a quick episode about this, because if y'all are seeing this, and if you're following me on social, because I keep reposting different things, and I wanted to kind of start tying some of that stuff together. But a lot of people are talking about it. So recently I was listening to the Niche Pursuit podcast with Spencer Hawes. I'll make sure there's a link to this episode. And they do every once in a while, they do like a news episode, which is fairly interesting. So I do recommend following them. But they just had one, and they talked about the lawsuit for the Google stealing the data, right? So they talked a little bit about the background of that and how Google's being accused of stealing data. And this is where my personal opinion starts to differ from what some of the other folks say, right? So in that particular episode, they specifically were like, what's going to happen? AI isn't going to go away. I do agree with that. AI is not going anywhere. Right? We are going to learn to live with it, however it is, in whatever shape and form, right? So while I 1000% agree that AI isn't going anywhere, I even 100% agree that, okay, if it's a class action lawsuit, they may, get a little slap on the wrist, have to pay a fine, and we may all get a 50-cent check in the mail after we filled out like a 3-page form. I get that, right? I get that part. But I think it's going to be a huge, huge difference of how they present the data, and they're going to have start citing sources. And I mentioned this in, and I don't know if it was a video or an episode, but I'm going to mention it here, that one of the things that's going to be important for us is creating information. So when they do start citing sources, that we are part of those sources. I'll get more to that by the end of this episode. But I really think it's not going to go away, but I think they'll now have to reference where they got some of the information, and maybe not all the information. And I give you an example. I'm testing out a bot for those who use SEO Assist. You guys know we are getting the SEO Assist Wisdom bot. And I'm testing out building, it pretty much is my own model for my own data. So this bot looks at all of my past trainings, my book, all the things that I've loaded in of my knowledge and my things around SEO. And so the users of SEO Assist will be able to go in there and ask it SEO related questions, ask for directions, just ask it things, right? But it is purely based on my data. Right. And so what I think, so one of the things that does, and we could turn it off and on in the tools that I'm using. But one of the things that does is it also, because right now it's using only video data, using mostly video data, right? And it actually points you to the videos that it got. And I know it's not every single video, but it's like the top 3 sources for the data that it's giving you, for the answers that it's giving you. Granted, it's a much smaller model. It's my only information. I understand how it's the capability is there for this tool to operate this way, which I like personally. It's helped me with testing, helped me with everything. I think that the AI companies, models, like I think, OpenAI, Bard, whomever, they're going to have to start giving up data in that same specific or particular way, especially on Chat GPT. And for Google, which Google already wants to point the site, so I don't think they're going to have as much of a problem with it. But Chat GPT right now points to nothing, right? And so I think if nothing else comes out of this, even the checks aren't going to be that big of a deal. The biggest deal that's going to come out of this is that it's going to force them by law to put some sources, right? Even if you got from 10 websites and you only put the top 3, they're going to have to start saying some of this data came from somewhere, right? Especially for the data, because they scraped a bunch of sites. And what scraping means, they went out, bot wise, and they collected whatever was on that site. And that's part of what was loaded into their system. So in that case, they're going to have to say some of this came from here, there, everywhere. I don't know if it's going to be a quick change. I think Google's going to have an easier time with it since they already are tapped into every single website, or most websites anyway. But I think it's a change that they're going to be forced to make. That's me. That's where I think this is going. We might not see it till 2024, 2025, but I think it's right there. And more importantly, well, I might have said this before in speculation. Now I think they're going to be forced, right? Now I think these lawsuits are going to bring out more of the need for that. So that's where Spencer, and I think his name's Jared, the other guy. Sorry, whoever you are, in case you're listening. But I think that's where we really differ, is that they're like, oh, nothing's going to change. And I think it's absolutely going to change. I don't think it's going to go away, but I think it's going to change the way that they're going to be able to, or need to, present the data and the information that's making up. So similar, back to my, y'all remember them papers in high school, because essentially that's what AI is. It's writing a paper really, really well, really, really fast, right? And so I think just like we had to cite our sources, they're going to have to start citing their sources too on those particular papers and stuff like that. So that's one thing. Now, turning into the conversation of what can we do about this? And I posted this on my Facebook. So if you're following me on social media, you should follow me on social media. If you aren't, because I often post these things like as soon as I see them and give some of my thoughts on them and stuff like that before I even have time to sit down and do an episode. But on July, I'm looking for the note of the thing, July 20th, July 20th, I posted about some research that I was doing, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I mentioned a post from Roberto Blake. So he must have posted this on like the 18th or 19th. I just recently saw it, right? On the 18th or 19th, talking about as content creators, what we can do to start protecting ourselves. And this is another one that I 1000% agree with, right? So I'm always talking about putting your information out there, but I also, and the reason why I talk about putting it out there, because I think most of my audience, you got down getting a course or membership or putting it behind a paywall. You don't got down putting the things so people can get to that paywall. That's the problem, right? So that's why I talk about more putting your stuff out there. So those who don't know, Roberto Blake is a really big YouTube person, like over 1 million followers, million views. He's like up there. Another guy I definitely recommend following, especially if you are in or thinking of getting into YouTube. So Roberto Blake had a whole post on what content creators can, or what creators can do, because he talked more to creators who are already creating free content. And his conversation was one of the things that these AI tools, and all of it was blanket everybody, but of course, talking about Chat GPT. When you're the biggest fish, you're the one that the people try to catch the first, right? So talking about Chat GPT, but all AI tools. But one of the things he said is that it can't get to information and content that's behind a paywall, and it can't legally use copyrighted information, which is essentially what I just said, right? So what that means is, and now we know, especially when it comes to like copyrighted information, like a book, we know that they're stealing books, but they are stealing, right? So if you're putting it in a book, that doesn't mean, oh, that's not enough, or woe is me. That just means you've got more of an argument to say what they're doing is incorrect, right? If you put it behind a paywall, right? And a paywall being, if you put in a membership site, if you put in a course, if you're using something like Teachable or a Memberable or a Kajabi, where people have to log in, and even if you're not getting paid for the paywall, but even if you just like, you got to sign up with an email address in order to get this information, you have to do something, and it's just not publicly available. They can Google a link to the information, but they can't exactly Google what's in the information. And so he was saying, as creators, if we start doing more of this with some of our content, so his folks, again, more mass content creators, so he was like, start using buy a coffee, the tip jars, or what's the one that everybody uses, start with a P? I completely forgot the name, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Somebody's probably screaming at me right now with that name. But using more of these tools to not put everything out there for free, then that is going to help to protect some of your data. And I say some because somebody put it out there for free, so that might be out there anyway, but at least it won't be yours, right? It won't be your exact words, it won't be yours. Say if you come up with a new concept or method or something like that is yours, then you've got more of an argument, and you most likely they can't get to it if it's behind a paywall system, unless they did something not too legal, right? Just like with the books, right? Unless they did something not too legal, then they really can't get to it. So he was saying that more people should do that. I think most of you guys are either doing that or working on doing that. So I don't think we have as much as that problem, but I wanted to mention it for those who are not. I think our problem, like I said, is coming up with what should be free to lead them to, because you got to have that balance between free and paid content, right? So he was saying that's what more folks should do. So more content creators should be putting some things behind a paywall, which will essentially help to protect it from being used and reused, regurgitated, however, regenerated with the AI, from the AI system. So I 1000% agree with that as well. The other thing, which is what I brought up in my post, and again, these links will all be in the show notes or the description for watching this on YouTube. What I said in my post was, not only do we need to start thinking about it that way, but also when we're using these tools. And so here's when you're using something like a Chat GPT or any AI tools really, but definitely a Chat GPT. One of the things that's important is to understand that Chat GPT doesn't know everything. No AI tool knows everything, because if they're doing the right things, they only know public facing information, right? And I'm gonna assume everyone's doing the right things, and or they're gonna get caught and have to do the right thing, right? So they only know public facing information. So what happens is, and I've seen this, and I even run into this myself when I use Chat GPT. Yes, I do use it sometimes for different things, only for personal stuff. But for sometimes I have really hard time getting answers or getting the right answers, the answers I want. And I realize it's because I want more detailed answers. I want more specific answers. And Chat GPT only knows surface level, right? They only know the things that are publicly available. So I can't ask it specific things that are happening, and not just based on, because the other thing is also dated information, because they're only up to I think 2022 in terms of information, but it's dated. But even more important than that, it's always going to be less specific, because most likely the more specific things is in a book, right? So like, think again, back to college, you're not going to get your whole physics book in Chat GPT unless they sold a book. Right? You're not going to get that. You're going to get the written synopsis about it. You're going to get maybe what some reviews said about it. You're going to get what, the Amazon description said, and it's going to compile all of that, right? But it's not going to give you the specific like page 10 said information, unless again, right? So when we're using these tools, I think that's really, really important to understand that you're not getting everything. And like what I was talking about in that post, because I'm actually doing a talk very soon at a conference. I'll let you guys know when it's all said and done and ready for promo. But I'm actually doing a talk on AI tools outside of Chat GPT, right? In that particular talk, I am talking about some other AI tools you can use, right? And what is the big difference between what's in ChatGPT and why you may want to use these tools, especially if you're doing something very specific. So, for example, SEO Assist, you're writing content, and writing content from a business standpoint as a business owner, and writing it to, we let you choose your audience, so you don't even have to only be writing to other business owners, but you're writing to sell something. So when we create what we create with in mind all the SEO content and data that I know, right, and my team knows. B, we're writing in mind of what we know about entrepreneurship and business owners and strategy for business owners and things like that. So even going to Chat GPT, while it might like write you a blog post, you don't know if it's the right blog post. You don't know if it's a blog post that's going to get you good SEO benefits. You don't know all that, because that's the type of stuff that people build into their tools, right? So when you're looking at using, like I use Opus Clips, which I love. And Opus Clips is one that takes your long form video content and breaks it up into smaller content. I'll let you guys know, when you see this as a little clip on my TikTok or wherever it's going to be, it will be a clip that came out of Opus Clips, right? Now, and granted, because they're actually pretty newer, so they're literally every week pushing out some type of new updates. They are using their understanding and their logic of what it takes to go viral, right? What it takes to make a good clip. They're actually like, it's not even just like let me get from minute 1 to minute 130. It's actually taking, like, I've gotten some videos back that's like, you said this sentence here, that sentence there, and it puts them together and makes a beautiful statement, right? So they do some really good stuff. I really am enjoying using Opus Clips. I'll make sure there's a link to that as well in the show notes and or the description. And but the way that they're doing that is it's using AI, right? Because that's the model that helps us, just process a lot of information. But it's also using the logic that they've built in to say that this is what's correct. This is what makes a good clip. This is what makes a good caption. This is what, it gives you captions and it puts like a bomb here or a house there or like little emojis and stuff. This is what it takes to do that, like to do those kind of things. That's stuff that if you tried to go into, and I've actually tried this with a couple of tools because I'm testing out like how to handle podcast show notes. One of the things, I have a very specific, I can't even say it, specific formula, which we'll put a video to that too in the show notes. But I have a very specific formula on what we do to make good show notes that are searchable, that come up for various different things, that answer the questions that people are asking without giving them all the information, and that encourage them to actually listen to the whole episode. So, and if anybody who's worked with me, if you read these show notes, we've got a very specific formula to make good show notes. What I found with some of these tools, they're not doing that. They're doing summaries. They'll tell you what happened in the episode. And to the layperson, they'll be like, oh, I got good show notes. And when I come in, I'm like, that is not good. Like, not say it's not good. it's not effective. Right? It may be a very good summary, it may be very good information, but that's not the thing that's hitting all the different logic points that you should be hitting when you're doing your show notes. So the same thing with blog posts. I've done that too. Like, okay, this is information, and it might be decently put together information, but it's not hitting like the nod to business I teach you guys, the call to action I teach you guys. It's not hitting all of those things that is going to bring it into something that somebody is going to bring somebody from, we call the search to buy journey, but bring somebody from searching for a topic to ready to buy. And that's because both of those logic and methodologies I put together are based specifically on, I know what business owners' goals are when they're creating this type of content. Like, I'll even say, like, maybe if you were doing true crimes, but even that, your goal is to get people to listen to more, so we're gonna get that too, right? But everything's built with very specifically the goals and the purpose in mind, whereas Chat GPT doesn't know all this. I even said somewhere, I was, someone I know everybody likes to say act as if you're and they think that is like getting it better results. And a lot of times I've tested it with and without. That's not, it's getting you almost the same results. And if you get too specific, act as if you're a welder from New York, guess what it does not know about? What is a welder from New York? What do they act like? Right? Because nowhere's that written what a welder from New York acts like, right? Which is a whole nother thing. If you ever use Midjourney is the AI that people use to make images, and it's still off of OpenAI, so it's using some of the same data sources. But if you ever use Midjourney, you'll completely understand what I'm talking about. I've been doing different things for coloring books and stuff, working on a project with my son. I'm teaching him Midjourney. I am. He's 8. I figured it'd be fun, right? And some of the things we're like, give us a lion with an afro. It barely knows what an afro is, right? I've seen other people's, we use Midjourney, you can actually see other people's prompts. I've seen other people's prompts. Like I saw one that was like, a boy dressed up like a gangster sitting in a chair. That was what he wanted, or the person wanted, right? I'm not even gonna go, like, it's a whole nother episode what it gave that person, but I'll just say it was clear that it did not understand some of the words that person was saying. And it gave something. So one thing I'm going to tell you about AI is going to give you an answer. It may not be the right one. And I know I've said that several billion times, and I'm going to say it again. It may not be the right one. So what I advise, and not just because I have a tool, but any tool, and the reason why I'm doing this talk on tools beyond Chat GPT is because when you need specific results, you've got specific goals, you may need a more specific product for that, right? You may need the products that are built around a specific framework. You may need the product that has different sources of data. So like what I just told you guys, I'm testing out my bot and all that knowledge that's been put into my tool, and now that's married with what's going on in AI, is not anywhere else. That's why I made the tool, right? That's exactly why. And that's the truth for a lot of, like, what Opus Clips knows is getting married to some of the AI logic, but it's not being reproduced. And be clear, because we're using AI, we're not giving AI our data. Does that make sense? I hope. All right. So we're not giving them our data. So, once you put it out there, they got it too. That's actually not how it works. A lot of people are like, oh, I already put all my business on Facebook, so it's already on the internet. Technically, yes, but Facebook can't say, hey, you can now use that person's data. Like, that just is not how it works. So same thing. I can build a model with OpenAI, but my model is still my model with just my data, my very specific data. So if you're looking at tools, so as on the creator standpoint, if you're looking at tools, that's really important to know. I've heard a lot of people like, I don't need all these tools because I got Chat GPT. And in my head, I'm screaming, no, you need these tools if you're trying to get, like, if it's trying to write emails, it doesn't always know. They might sound good, but again, it does not know what's a real converting email, right? I've had it do things like, I'll tell it about a program and it's telling me about a physical product. Or I'll tell it, like, I work with online entrepreneurs and it's talking about online entrepreneurs. And, well, you got to select the location first. Online, that was the location, right? We don't have a brick and mortar, right? But it doesn't understand all the different things. And sometimes when you tell too many different things, it actually gets confused, which is a whole nother story. So, and that's where I'm going to leave that. And you guys will see all of kind of my background information on that. The last thing I want to talk about before ending this episode, that once again was supposed to be quick and not very quick, is copyright concerns. Now, this is where I'm concerned for my audience. I'm concerned for you guys, especially if you're using any AI, right? But especially if you're using an AI that creates it for you, right? And I'm gonna pick on Chat GPT and other companies like it, that it's like, and even some other companies like Jarvis, I'm gonna pick on them right now too, who are just like, give me one word, give me 2 sentences, and we're gonna write a whole thing for you. That's not enough to be copyright safe. It's not, right? And so if you're only giving minimal information and it's turning that information to another 600 words, there's a high likelihood that some of those words came from somewhere else and someone else. A high likelihood, right? Now, I will say most of the copywriting tools that I've known and seen and stuff like that, they do some type of plagiarism check on their back end to make it better. But I think as people who are using these, especially if you're putting it out as a blog post, if you're putting it out as a social media post, if you're putting it out on anything where other people are going to be able to see it, copy, paste it, and see if it's somebody else's material, then a sales page. I know a lot of people have been using Chat GPT to write the sales pages. I think if you're using it for anything like that, you also need to be using a plagiarism checker. I like Copyscapes. Copyscapes is one of those old tried and true kind of deals, like they built their own model, that type of thing. I've heard people using Grammarly. I haven't used Grammarly, so I'm not gonna say yes or no. I use it for Grammarly stuff, which all the time, right? But I haven't used it for plagiarism checking. But you're going to have to. And what I would say is find the tool. Like if you're going to Grammarly, put something that you know is plagiarized. Like, you know, this is on your website, put it in there and see if it finds it. If it doesn't find it, it is not a good checker, not a good plagiarism checker, right? So, but I say all this to say that you're going to need to do your due diligence before you just plop that AI content anywhere. And this is from any tool. I'll even say from my tool, right? Although one of the big differences with my tool is we ask you a lot more questions than 1 or 2 words. I'm just going to say it now. Not a lot. 9 or 10, but not a lot. But we're asking for more information so we can put that into your actual writing. And B, our results aren't fully AI driven. We are AI assisted, not AI powered. I think I've talked about that, or AI generated, right? I've talked about that a couple of different times. And that is one of the reasons why. So like if AI went away tomorrow, I would be a little mad because I got to do a lot of rework, but SEO Assist is going to still live, right? We are not heavily or only dependent on the AI results in order to deliver you the content that we deliver. I know that's how my tool is built. I don't know how everybody else's tool is built. So I'm going to say check us all. Check every single one of you guys. So every single piece of content. So if you're creating something, if you're putting on a sales page, if you're putting it on a website, if you're putting it in a podcast, if you're putting it on social media, although social media is not fully searchable, I've seen lots of cases where people will say, this person stole my words, and post up an identical post that somebody else already posted up somewhere. And they may not even know when they were writing it, like the other person who posted the duplicate, they might have gotten that out of Chat GPT, said, say these words, and little did they know it was somebody else's words, right? If you say, give me 5-10 posts about SEO, and it gives you 5-10 posts about SEO, you'll know who originated that content, which is another reason, right? Another reason why SEO Assist, I'm gonna say it. We generate social media posts, but we repurpose for you. So you give us the blog post, it creates your social media post from your own true content. So there's, again, less likelihood of having any copyright issues, unless you had one in the original post, right? Of having any copyright issues or anything like that, because it's not just pulling things from the blue ether. And what's even worse, so going back to my earlier parts in the episode, what's even worse is you can't even cite the resources. If you could have cited the sources, then you probably wouldn't need to check for plagiarism that much, because you can go back and say, oh, yeah, this is definitely different than what they said. Right? But when you can't do that, then you've got a problem. And I'm going to tell you guys, so I know somebody's like, well, I rewrite everything. Like, very few people actually say what Chat GPT said, I'm going to put it right on my blog. Like, most people do rewrite it, but are you rewriting it enough to avoid plagiarism? Don't think because you go in and you zhuzh it up a little bit and tweak these words and, make it sound like my voice. Don't think your voice doesn't sound like something that's copyrighted. Just about none of us are teaching something that nobody ever taught before. When I wrote my book, when I wrote my SEO workbook, I had to take that whole book several times, not just one time. The whole book went through plagiarism check. And that's because I mean, other people have talked about it too, right? Maybe not, again, not the same words, not the same way, not the same methodology or the same logic behind it, but by no means am I the first person to ever write a book on SEO. And I knew that, right? And so in knowing that, and that was in 2019, I made sure that I did my due diligence and had it run through plagiarism checkers several times. Several different companies paid plagiarism checkers. And I don't think you need to do that extent, I mean, unless you're writing a book, right? I don't think we all need to do that extent, but it is really that serious. You don't want to be intentionally or unintentionally, you don't want to be that person who is caught putting out plagiarized data, plagiarized content. You just don't want to. You don't want the cancel culture dragging of it all. You don't want the questioning of your credibility as a business owner, and as especially if you're in an info business and somebody starts questioning the credibility of your information. You don't want that. So it is on us. Like, you can't say, well, I didn't know. And that's another thing, which is probably a whole other topic. I probably should have one of my legal friends on here to talk about this. That so many times I hear business owners saying, well, I didn't know, and pleading like the ignorance of it all. And the I don't know actually goes out the window when you get into business and get into commerce. If you're doing it in the name of an established company, so which we all should be, right? If you're doing it in the name of established company, if you're doing it and profiting off of it, all of that different stuff, I don't know, goes out the window. Like, that is no longer applicable to you, right? You might, if you ever ended up in court about it, you might get a little bit lesser of a sentence, but you still, because you're held liable to a different standard of knowing and of finding out and of making sure and of triple checking. So that's what I'm telling you guys here. Know, find out, triple check. You can't say I didn't know it was plagiarized. You know you didn't write it. So you know that there's a chance that someone else wrote it and not just the tool that you're using. So I say all that to say, and I'm not going to say much more on that, but I say all that to say is that as these things are coming out about AI, about Google stealing, Chat GPT, OpenAI stealing, all these different things, to definitely be more diligent and make sure that you're checking through your work. As a creator, make sure that you're protecting your work. So make sure that your things are copyrighted. Make sure that if you're doing anything that you are, like making a book or stuff like that, that you're going to the proper channels, getting the proper copyrights, ISBNs, all that other type of stuff. If you're doing a video, if you're doing things that you don't want out there in public, make sure you're putting it behind a really credible paywall. I would not. I've seen a lot of people, oh, it's on YouTube unlisted. I don't know if I'm trusting that right now. I actually prefer to pay for some services. And I'm not saying that like I got big money, I'm going to pay for everything, but I prefer to pay because I know when I pay for it, I have different rights than if I use it for free. And this goes for almost anything like images, stuff like that, because when I pay for it, I can say, even if I paid for it and they did something, I could even say they gave me the impression it was mine, right? Because I paid them for it. But I can say, because I paid for it, I expect it to be free and authentic and all the other things, copyright, all the things, right? And I say free, like free of copyright, not free in cash, right? But I expect for it to be held to a different standard than if I would have gotten it for free, right? So even common law, common use, things like that. All of that gets a little, and I just saw, I think it was Nicosia Anderson, which I'll probably link to that too. I think it was Nicosia who said this about the whole Barbie thing. Oh, was it Nicosia or was it Takora? I don't know. One of my lawyer people, right? I follow a few lawyers because I like to keep up to date, right? One of them mentioned like the whole, and I think I'm sure everybody's going to mention next couple of weeks about the whole, Barbie font is trademarked. Barbie's something about the saying of Barbie, or the name, of course, Barbie is trademarked. The color pink is trademarked. All these different things, right? Because they made sure they protected it. So even if someone else says, here, you can use this shade of pink, and it's the Barbie shade of pink, guess what? Y'all wrong. Both y'all wrong. But if you get caught, you're going to be around when it's caught and get in trouble first, right? So that was it for this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions. As usual, we're hanging out in Facebook in the SEO Growth Mob group, and we'll post a post. Anybody got questions about this? I feel like it's going to be a hot, growing topic for quite some time. But the 3 things you need to know today is check your content. If you're getting content and generating it from anywhere, protect your content. You're creating and don't want everybody seeing your stuff, start putting it behind a paywall. And as always, I'm going to say create content, because when they start having to cite sources, I need y'all to be some of the sources. Right? I need y'all to be the creators and the innovators and the people that they talk about, that they're driving traffic to, that they're saying part of this data was found here in this place, right? I think everybody talks about SEO might be dying. SEO ain't going nowhere. I think it's getting stronger and stronger. It's also getting a little bit more difficult, but that's a whole nother story. But I think it's getting stronger and stronger because now it's applying to more and more use cases, right? We got SEO, of course, for search engines in Google. We got SEO and things like TikTok. Now we got SEO and AI. Like, it is something you can no longer ignore, and you don't want to. And the longer you do, the more dated your stuff is going to be, and the more behind you are, and the less found. Right? You're getting deeper into the sea. I won't make any bad Titanic jokes, but you guys know what I mean. So definitely let's talk about this in the group. Hopefully this is super helpful, super educational. Check out all the links, because even I am citing my sources. These conversations are being had in several different places, and I think it helps to know what everyone's saying about it. All right. Talk to you guys later.
It is business. Big business.
Thanks for listening to the Girl Get Visible podcast. I hope you've learned a lot about how to get your brand out of the sea of sameness and start to get visible. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and let us know how much you enjoyed it and what you've learned from this episode of the Girl Get Visible podcast. I'll see you in the next episode. Girl, get visible.